They say the devil doesn't wear horns in the music industry, he wears a billion-dollar smile and hands you a pen. Imagine you're a young artist just trying to make it out. You spent years grinding, dreaming, pushing through rejection, then out of nowhere, two of the most powerful names in the business, Jay-Z and Beyoncé, offer you a record deal. That's supposed to be the top, right? The moment you finally made it? But what if that dream turns out to be a nightmare? What if that contract you signed in celebration becomes the cage you can't escape? This story isn't about hate. It's about truth. A woman once full of fire and hope sat in front of her camera recently and didn't hold back. With tears in her eyes and her voice shaking, she told the world something most people don't have the guts to even whisper. That deal with Jay-Z and Beyoncé? It broke her. And not just emotionally or creatively, she says it nearly cost her everything. I begged that man and his wife not to do me like this, she cried. And 48 hours later, they did exactly what I prayed they wouldn't. She wasn't ranting. She wasn't bitter. She was scared. Scared because after speaking out, she started getting anonymous calls, fake investigators, people saying they knew where she lived. She started hearing things about bloodlines, powerful families behind the scenes, the kind of people that don't like when secrets get out. And here's the part that hits hardest. She's not even alone. There are more like her, artists who signed to the biggest names thinking they were finally safe, finally respected. But instead, they find themselves trapped. Cut off from the world, cut off from themselves. See, the music industry isn't all glitz and Grammys. It's a business, and for the people at the top, artists aren't people. They're products. You're hot today, they'll package you, market you, and suck every bit of your creativity dry. But when your spark fades, when you start asking too many questions or pushing back, suddenly, you're a problem. You're difficult, you're replaceable. The woman in this story said something chilling. Once you give them entry, they don't just want your music. They want your voice, your identity, your soul. She talked about signing that contract and slowly realizing she wasn't in control anymore. Her creativity monitored. Her freedom gone. She wasn't being supported, she was being owned. And maybe you're thinking that's just one artist, maybe she's exaggerating, but look closer at the pattern. Over the years, so many artists have come forward with similar stories. Contracts they didn't understand, royalties they never saw, promises that turned to pressure. One by one, voices started rising up. And yet the same names stay untouchable. The same families, the same labels, the same machine. She used the term evil bloodlines. Sounds dramatic until you understand what she meant. It's not just about Jay-Z and Beyoncé. It's about entire dynasties that have ruled this industry for decades. These families pass down power like heirlooms. They own labels, media, PR firms. They decide who gets famous, who stays broke, and who disappears. What's even scarier is how deep it runs. It's not just about business, it's psychological. These artists are made to feel grateful, like they owe their success to the very people exploiting them. And once that mental trap is set, it becomes nearly impossible to fight back. This girl's story isn't just a warning, it's a red flag waving in a storm. If someone signs a deal with a billionaire power couple and still ends up feeling like a prisoner, what does that say about the system? She said the first red flag wasn't in the contract, it was in the silence. Once the deal was signed, the love bombing stopped. The endless texts, the flattering calls, the fake warmth from reps suddenly vanished. It was like a switch flipped. One day she was the next big thing, the next she was isolated. Every idea she had was either ignored or reshaped into something that didn't sound like her anymore. Her team kept saying things like, "That's not your sound," or "Let's do what works." But what worked was whatever they decided, not her. She recorded music that never saw the light of day. Beautiful, personal, raw songs scrapped. Instead, they handed her pre-written hooks and beats with one message: just sing, don't ask, don't think, just perform. She wasn't building a legacy, she was fueling a machine. The pressure came fast. She had to look a certain way, talk a certain way, post a certain way. Even the people around her started to change. Friends she used to confide in started acting like handlers. Her circle got smaller, but not by choice. Every time she pushed back, things got cold. One executive even told her, "You don't want to make enemies at this level." That's when she realized This wasn't a partnership, this was obedience disguised as opportunity. Behind closed doors, things got darker. She started hearing things, rumors whispered between assistants and stylists, stories about artists who tried to break free and suddenly disappeared from the charts, from playlists, from media altogether. Some had breakdowns, some just went quiet. She kept wondering, where do they all go? The bloodline started to make more sense. It wasn't just a figure of speech. She was told point blank by someone close to the label that there are families with generational control over the business. The names don't show up on paperwork, but they're behind the scenes, owning publishing rights, running legal firms, bankrolling entire companies. These families move like shadows, and if you try to expose them, the pushback isn't loud. It's surgical, quiet erasure. She talked about being warned not to trust her own legal team, that some of the lawyers helping her were connected to the same people she was trying to break away from. At one point, she stopped responding to unknown numbers entirely. She was getting calls at 2 a.m., voicemails with heavy breathing, texts that said things like, "You talk, you lose everything." But the most haunting one, "We made you, we can unmake you." The mental toll was brutal. She started having panic attacks before studio sessions. Her sleep was wrecked. The paranoia became constant, checking her locks twice, unplugging smart devices, deleting social apps. But even with all that fear, something in her snapped. Not in a broken way, in a freeing way. When she realized she had already lost what mattered most, herself. So she picked up her phone, sat in front of the camera, and hit record. No lighting, no makeup, no agenda, just truth. And she poured it all out. She begged people to read every contract, to question the deals that seemed too good. She looked into the lens like she was speaking directly to every kid out there chasing a dream. And she said, "They don't just take your music, they take your fire." The video wasn't meant to go viral. It was meant to heal. But once it hit the internet, people couldn't ignore it, because behind the emotion, there was a pattern, a blueprint. And suddenly, it wasn't just her story anymore. The comments section exploded. Some fans were shocked, some were in denial, but other artists, producers, engineers started coming forward. Quiet DMs turned into open messages. A few even admitted they'd signed similar contracts. They talked about NDAs, creative blocks, ghostwriters, and pressure to push certain messages in their song. One artist said she was told to change lyrics that didn't align with the label's image. Another shared how a single disagreement with an executive meant being shelved for 6 months. It wasn't music anymore, it was control. Some listeners couldn't believe Beyoncé and Jay-Z could be part of something so dark. But that was exactly the point. That's how the system works. It gives you idols so flawless, so powerful that the idea of them doing harm feels impossible. But behind that image, behind the polished red carpet smiles, there's a business model that runs on fear, silence, and manipulation, and it's been there for decades. She never once claimed they were the only ones responsible. That's what made her voice even more powerful. She wasn't trying to start drama, she was trying to pull the curtain back. The machine behind the music. The one that takes a 17-year-old kid with a dream and turns them into a puppet with no strings left to pull. That's the real villain. She spoke about how fame itself is a weapon. At first, it feels like freedom, like you finally have the stage, the fans, the respect, but slowly you realize you become addicted to being seen. You don't want to lose the spotlight, so you stop speaking up. You start shrinking, and that's when they own you. Labels exploit that desperation. They know most artists come from struggle. They offer you advances that feel like a blessing, but are really just chains with glitter on them. They build you up just enough to keep you chasing, and the moment you ask for ownership, better royalties, or creative freedom, the calls stop, the doors close. You're either silent or erased. She wanted to get that message to every young artist coming up, that contracts aren't just deals, they're weapons if you don't know what you're doing. She begged them to find lawyers who weren't connected to the label, to learn the business, to protect their masters, their publishing, their image, because once they take those things from you, there's no refund, no do-overs. But more than the legal advice, advice, her story was a reminder that the industry doesn't care about your art. It cares about profit, about control, about keeping the same handful of powerful people at the top. These so-called bloodlines don't just run the labels, they run the culture. They decide what's cool, what's promoted, what's buried. And if you go against them, you're not just fighting executives, you're fighting legacy power. Still, she refused to be a victim. She said she would rather go broke with her soul intact than be rich and hollow. She's working independently now, rebuilding everything from scratch, no label, no middlemen, just her voice and her truth. It's slower, it's harder, but it's real, and most importantly, it's hers. The industry may not change overnight, the bloodlines won't let go easily, but every time someone speaks up, cracks form. People start asking questions, and when enough questions pile up, the facade starts to fall apart. Her breakdown wasn't weakness, it was a beginning, a battle cry. For every artist who thought they were crazy, alone, or powerless, she proved that truth still matters, that courage still matters, and that sometimes one voice is enough to shake the whole system.